Hello there. Happy Thursday, my Math 8 students. April 30th. Here we are almost through the month of April. Good work. I was looking and we're getting crazy close. Like I think I just looked after today. We have 3 weeks, which in and of itself is exciting, but that means only 6 days. So wow, that's crazy. Keep working hard. Let me know if you've got any questions. You can email me. And again, my Zoom hour is Thursday, 2 to 3. So that information I think you have. So today's lesson it requires a little more thinking. So I've only assigned one exercise. So you got 4 questions. I want you, if you don't do well, I want you to go back and do it a second time and see if maybe a second time through it'll make a little more sense. I am going to attach an optional video if you'd like to watch him explain it as well. But as I look at these problems, I'll give you what helps me as I work them, and then you can decide maybe something he says will help, and maybe you won't have trouble with these. But I put up here at the top of the board, remember slope. We say rise over run, but it actually is also the change in your y over the change in your x. And the reason I word it like that is because on these, you're going to want to look at the labels of your x and your y axis. And that is what actually saves me as I do any of these. So let me just show you, I've got 2 examples, and you are only going to be asked to find no, you're not going to be asked to find. You will be asked to interpret what the y-intercept means or what the slope means. So you're not going to have to do both. You're just going to be asked one or the other. For my example, I'm going to help you do this y-intercept and the slope on this one, and the y-intercept and the slope on that one. That way, we've only got 2 problems, but you'll get 4 examples. So on this one, as you look at the y-axis label, this is the ear circumference in millimeters, which is kind of funny. And you're like, okay, whatever that is. As you look at your x-axis label, it's the age in years. So they've actually tracked newborns' ear circumference, and then a 1-year-old ear circumference, and a 2-year-old, and they have discovered, or at least this graph tells us, that the slope is 0.48. So what I would immediately do if I was given this problem and asked for the y-intercept meaning, I would look at this intercept and I would say it's 90. And what does that 90 represent? Well, it represents the ear circumference because that's the y-intercept. So it's 90 millimeters is the ear circumference. But when is that? You need a second identifying mark, and that is when the age is 0. So your x is always going to be at 0. Whatever label this is, it's going to be 0. So the y-intercept means that the ear circumference is going to be 90 millimeters at birth on average, or when your age is 0. 90 millimeters ear circumference at age 0. And your answers are going to be worded maybe a little different, but use that reasoning skills, and I think you'll be okay. Now, the second thing it's going to ask you, or some of the questions will ask you, is what does the slope mean? I would immediately write whatever slope they've given you, and they give it to you each time. Well, that slope is going to be 0.48 over 1. And I'm going to write it as a fraction because remember, it's the change in y over the change in x. So when I write this number as a fraction, all I need to do is label it and then pick out the right answer. So this 0.48 is the change in the y. So it is the ear circumference. And the change in the x, the denominator, is the age in years. So what this is telling me is that the ear circumference is going to grow 0.48 millimeters every year. And so to me, if I write it as a fraction and put those labels, it makes so much more sense. Let me go ahead and look at a second one with you. Hopefully, 2 examples kind of remind you how we're looking at these and help you with interpreting. So the y-axis is your mood rating, and the x-axis is the hours playing sports. So, you're looking here in the mood rating. At the beginning is 5, but notice it continues to go up the more hours that you spend playing sports. Kind of interesting graph here. So the y-intercept, as you look at your y-axis, and again, they're going to tell you that, the y-intercept is 5. It means that your mood rating is 5. But remember, you've got to have that second part of the graph with it. So that is when you've spent 0 hours playing sports, when you haven't been playing at all. When playing sports is 0. Okay, so make sure you get this comparison here. Don't just look for, okay, I have to find something that has a 5 in it. Because as I've looked at these options, every one of them is going to have the number 5 in it. They're asking you to interpret what that 5 means and interpret that correctly. So y-axis, look at that label, and then recognize that that means when your x-axis is at 0, or when your x is at 0. So the slope meaning, and again, this slope is 3/2. So I immediately am going to put that as, well, what makes sense to me is that's 1.5. So my slope is going to be 1.5 over 1. And the reason I write it like that is because now I can write my labels in, and it's going to make more sense in this context. So the change in y is my mood rating, and the change in x is the hours playing sports. So now as I interpret this, I can see that, well, look here, I could even read it back. I could read it from bottom to top. Every hour I play sports, my mood rating increases 1.5. Or I could reverse the way I say it and say, well, my mood rating is going to increase 1.5 for every hour I play sports. So just to kind of emphasize, you want to look at those labels. Think of especially your slope in terms of the y label over the x label, and then put it in that context. Your y-intercept, simply look at that y and then recognize that that y-intercept is going to be when your x is at 0. So 4 questions today, optional video. Let me know if you have questions. Let me know if you're having any trouble or anything. Sure do miss seeing you. And if you're able, you can join in for the Zoom meeting today at 2.